Good evening. I hope you've all been having a wonderful October so far. As we get closer and closer to Halloween, I figured it was only appropriate that we gather around in the dark and, as per tradition, tell some scary stories. And because longtime viewers of my channel will know that I have a certain predilection for the classic era of creepypastas, I thought that the best thing to do would be to tell 3 short tales from the golden era of creepypastas that I think are still worth preserving in our modern age. So please, take a seat and get comfortable as we settle in to tell our first story. It's a cautionary little tale about how sometimes the things we think we perceive aren't always so black and white. Or should I say, white and red. A man went to a hotel and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman behind the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room, there was a door with no number that was locked, that nobody was allowed in, and especially that nobody should look inside the room under any circumstances. Taking her words to heart, he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room and straight to bed. However, on the following night, his curiosity would not allow him to stop thinking about the room with no number on the door. Eventually, it simply became too much for him to handle, and the man found himself leaving his room and walking down the hallway until he arrived at that door with no number. He first tried the handle, but sure enough, it was locked. He then bent down and looked through the wide keyhole. Cold air passed through it, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel bedroom, just like his, except that in the corner of this room was a woman whose skin was completely white. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. The man stared in confusion for a while, and he almost knocked on the door out of curiosity, but decided not to at the last moment. Instead, he crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day, he returned to the door again and once more looked through the wide keyhole. But this time, all he saw was the color red. He couldn't make anything out besides that distinct red color, unmoving. Perhaps, he thought, the inhabitants of the room knew that he had been spying on them the night before, and had since blocked the keyhole with something red like a piece of clothing or a bit of furniture. At this point, the man walked away again and decided to consult the woman at the front desk for more information. She sighed and said, "Did you look through the keyhole?" The man told her that he did, and she responded, "Well, I might as well tell you the story. Many years ago, a man that was staying at this hotel murdered his wife in that very room, and her ghost still haunts it. But there was something about these people that was a bit out of the ordinary. They were completely pale white, except for their eyes, which were pure red." That ending always sends chills down my spine. The lesson to be learned here is a simple one, folks. Always respect people's privacy. But I suppose not everyone is capable of respecting what should be such obvious rules of etiquette. Just take the protagonist of our next story, for example. It's another short but sweet story where a talented author manages to weave quite a disturbing portrait. There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day of hunting, found himself in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown outside, he decided to ask the owners if he could stay there for the night. He approached, but found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. After weighing his options, the hunter flopped down on the cabin's single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around, he was surprised to see the walls adorned by many portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, These portraits almost appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable. Making a concerted effort to ignore the many hateful faces, he turned to face the wall and, exhausted, fell into a restless sleep. Face down in an unfamiliar bed, he eventually woke up the next morning and turned, blinking in unexpected sunlight. Looking up at the walls, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, just windows. See, what did I say before? If you don't want misfortune to befall you, Rule 1 is to respect people's privacy. After all, if someone were to break into your house while you were gone, I think you'd be well within your rights to give them a good hard look for yourself. Now, the hour is getting late, and I can see that you're starting to nod off on me. So I'll tell you just one more tale, as long as it's not getting too spooky for you. After all, you're not scared, right? You are lying in your bed. The dull whirring of your air conditioner is the only thing separating you from total silence. You know, that particular silence that's so heavy and so thick that it's almost the equivalent of a loud noise itself. The kind of silence where you could hear a pin drop 3 rooms away. The kind of silence that fills your ears with the sound of your own heartbeat as your ear presses against your pillow. That kind of silence. The dull whirring is the only noise you can hear, a noise that typically goes unnoticed until it is the only noise present. It is a comforting sound, whether you realize it or not. A sort of white noise. But suddenly your room is back at the temperature specified on the thermostat, and the whirring comes to a stop as the vent makes a dull clang. To your misfortune, you are not yet asleep, and the silence sets in. You should be comforted by the knowledge that you could hear anything and everything in your surroundings, making up for the lack of vision provided by the darkness. But you aren't. It's this very environment that sets you on edge, causes your heart to beat a bit faster, makes your body tense without explanation, and makes you aware that you are not alone. But you are alone, right? You've been laying there with your eyes closed for almost 15 minutes now, and you made sure that everything was normal in your room before you turned off the light. You're a smart one, aren't you? All those personality quizzes you took just reinforced what you already knew. If you were in a horror movie, you'd survive until the end. You even made a carefully laid plan of what you would do in any of the situations you've read about in creepypastas. But that stuff is just nonsense anyway, right? You aren't scared. Or at least, that's what you keep telling yourself. But wait, what was that? Was that the rustling of fabric? But you didn't shift in your bed, or make any movement. Did you make that noise? No, you couldn't have. You're paralyzed to your bed, stiff with an unease that was not present until these very moments. You must have imagined it. You must have. You roll over to face the wall. Out of sight, out of mind. If there's something in the room with you, it will just have to accept that you are much too tired to deal with it at the moment. You're stricken with uneasiness as you hear that same rustling again. But this time, it is accompanied by a soft thud on the ground. Your heart seizes in your chest. Did you really just hear that? No, you've just gotten yourself worked up about nothing. You really should stop playing survival horror games so late at night. It's messing with your brain. You are a rational person. Stop acting so childish and just fall asleep already. You close your eyes tightly, silently hoping that sleep will whisk you away soon. You're practically begging for the safety of the non-existent dream world of your own creation. You're running away in a sense, but there's nothing there, right? You're just tired. I know. As you clench your eyes tightly shut, you become aware that no matter how much you want to, you can no longer move your arms and legs. Come on now. Are you really letting this get to you? What are you, 12 years old? Suck it up and fall asleep already. Now, more tense than ever, that unnerving sound echoes across the room again. The rustling of fabric, followed by a soft thud on the ground. Unwittingly, you're holding your breath now, eyes shut as tightly as possible. You have a childish urge to pull the blanket over your head. You're imagining it all. It's all in your head. I thought you were better than this. Your heart is pounding loudly in your ears now, but not loudly enough to drown out that now repetitive sound approaching from across the room. What was that rustling? Maybe you just left some paper on the ground. That has to be it. And that thumping? It's probably just the cat or the dog or something. They probably ran in when you weren't looking before you closed the door. Yeah, you're just paranoid. The noise is now within a foot of your bed, and with your back to it, you don't dare turn around to investigate. Not that it'd do much good. The only light in your room is the dull glow of your cell phone on the nightstand next to you. You plugged it in before you crawled into bed, remember? But you don't dare turn around and look. There's nothing there anyway. Minutes that feel like hours pass as you face your wall, stiff as a board, unable to will your uncooperative body to move. You haven't heard the noises in a while now. Not since it reached the edge of your bed. You know there's nothing there, you silly. It's this silence. It's messing with you. You really should have turned on some music or something before you went to bed. Oh well, maybe next time. Suddenly, a familiar clang echoes through the room, followed by that familiar whirring. You exhale deeply, your body relaxing as you're flooded with relief. Thank God that's over. Now you can finally sleep in peace. That silence was really getting to you. You roll over and open your eyes to check the time on your lit cell phone. It must have been at least an hour since you first went to bed. You are greeted face to face with his ear-to-ear grin. Dimly lit sockets where eyes once resided stare intently at you. I see you're still awake. And with an ending like that, who wouldn't be wide awake? But I am afraid that you'll have to try falling asleep without my help, because this is now the point where I retire to my own chambers. After all, I thought I heard someone walk in uninvited just a few minutes ago, and it wouldn't be proper of me not to give them a hearty welcome stare. So I bid you a pleasant evening and a happy Halloween. This is the story of the day where there was all this blood. A man was walking around and blood started coming out of him everywhere. There was so much blood that it filled up an elevator. He went to the store and there was just blood all over the place. People were slipping in it and they were grossed out. He tried to go swimming and all of the shark went nuts and bit into everybody. He got chased by all the vampires ever. One time the blood got a kid and a dog. At the end of the day, everyone decided they would send him to space so that he would stop getting blood everywhere. The scariest part is that the man was you, or he was a lady if you were a lady and you forgot that this happened.